There are things that do not happen loudly. No crashing sound, no obvious warning signs. They do not come like a storm, but like a thin mist, slow, cold, and quietly covering everything before you even realize you are standing inside it. You do not lose your faith in one night. You do not stop believing in God because of a single event. You do not abandon love because of one wound. What happens is far more subtle than that. You still pray. You still read the Bible. You still know what is right. You can still speak words that sound very spiritual. But deep inside, something has changed. Not rebellion, not resistance, but exhaustion. A nameless weariness, a quiet depletion, a feeling that if you keep feeling, keep caring, keep loving the way you once did, you will not survive it. And so you begin to do something very human. You pull back. You become more careful. You expect less. You open your heart less. Not because you no longer love, but because love has become too costly. There is a hard truth to accept. We do not always stop loving because we hate. Sometimes we stop loving simply because we are in too much pain. No one teaches you how to freeze your heart. No one tells you to become cold. But life teaches you through being misunderstood, through betrayal from places you never expected, through prayers that seem unanswered, through giving everything you have and receiving only silence in return. And little by little you learn how to survive instead of how to live fully. Jesus spoke about this, not with condemnation, not to frighten people, but as a warning filled with sorrow. He did not say that in the last days people would stop knowing right from wrong. He said something more dangerous would happen. Love would grow cold, not disappear, not be stolen, but slowly cool down. Like a fire that is no longer fed, it does not go out at once. It simply burns weaker. The light remains, but the warmth is gone. And what is most frightening, he did not say this would happen to the world first. He said it would happen among those who follow him, those who know Scripture, those who believe the truth, those who once loved deeply. Pause for a moment and ask yourself not to condemn yourself, but to be honest. When was the last time you cried for someone else? Not because they hurt you, but because you truly ached for them. When was the last time you forgave without an inner battle? When was the last time you loved without asking yourself, is this safe for me? You did not become numb in one day. You were trained into it over time. Each time you chose silence instead of standing for truth. Each time you turned away instead of leaning in a little more. Each time you told yourself, that's enough. No alarm sounded, only a slow retreat of the heart. There is a very thin line between wisdom and fear. Wisdom protects the heart, but allows it to live. Fear freezes the heart so it no longer feels anything. And the irony is this: modern society often calls that freezing maturity. Don't trust too much. Don't give too much. Don't let yourself get hurt. It sounds reasonable. It sounds safe. But Jesus never called us to live safe lives. He called us to live true lives. There are people who still serve in the church, but no longer sense the presence of God. Not because God left, but because their hearts built walls. There are people who still preach about love, but no longer allow love to touch them. There are people who still serve, but only out of duty, no longer out of compassion. This is not obvious rebellion. It is quiet hardening. The danger of a hardened heart is not that you do wrong. It is that you no longer feel anything when you do what is right. You do not hate anyone. You just no longer care. You do not oppose God. You simply keep your distance. You have not lost faith. You have just stopped expecting. And the human heart can endure many things, but it was never created to live numb. So what is the good news? If you feel uncomfortable hearing this, that is not a bad sign. It means your heart is not dead. It is just tired, very tired. And Jesus does not come to condemn a tired heart. He comes to restore it. There is something Jesus said that many people overlook. He did not say love would grow cold because people became more evil. He said love would grow cold because lawlessness would increase. Not because the law disappeared, but because the meaning of right and wrong became distorted. When boundaries disappear, the heart no longer knows where to stand. The lawlessness Jesus spoke of is not only public sin, not only violence or corruption, it is far more subtle. It is when truth becomes personal opinion, righteousness becomes perspective, integrity is labeled rigid, and compromise is called love. When everything can be justified, the heart grows weary from constant discernment, and when the heart is tired for too long, it chooses the easiest way to survive, to stop feeling. There is a deep reason why love needs God's law, not to control but to protect. The law gives love a shape, a boundary, a place to stand. When right and wrong blur, loving becomes dangerous. Because if you love what is right, you will be attacked. If you speak the truth, you will be misunderstood. If you live righteously, you will be labeled extreme. And so, many choose the safer path, not loving too deeply, not trusting too much, not caring too far. This is how love grows cold. Not through hatred, but through prolonged compromise. Not through rebellion, but through constant silence. Each time you see wrong and say, "It's not my responsibility." Each time you see suffering and think, "I'm too tired." Each time you choose comfort over standing for truth. Your heart does not die immediately. It just steps back, then steps back again. There is a dangerous moment few people recognize. It is when you no longer feel anger at injustice. Not because you have forgiven, but because you have grown used to it. When injustice no longer troubles you. When others' pain no longer keeps you awake. When bad news earns only a sigh before you move on. That is not peace. That is numbness. Jesus never called us to a numb life. He called us to a life that dares to feel, dares to hurt, dares to love, even at a cost. But he also knows we cannot do this on our own when our hearts have been wounded too deeply. So he did not only warn us, he opened a path to restoration. There is something vital to understand. Guarding the heart is not the same as freezing it. Scripture says, above all else, guard your heart. Guarding does not mean locking it away. It does not mean stopping love. It means allowing God to rule your heart, not fear. Many have built walls in the name of wisdom, but in truth, out of fear. They say, don't expect any more. Don't give any more. Don't trust anyone. But Jesus never said, just stop loving so you won't get hurt. He said, come to me, all who are weary and burdened. Not to escape love, but to be healed so you can love again. Here is a hard truth. You cannot love like Christ if you do not allow him to touch your deepest wounds. Many want to keep serving without facing their pain. They want to heal others, but refuse to be healed themselves. So they love in their own strength until they are empty. Then they call that emptiness maturity. Jesus never loved from emptiness. He loved from deep union with the Father, and that is the only way love does not grow cold. Not by trying harder to love, but by being loved first. Not by forcing yourself to care, but by letting God soften what has grown hard. You may be thinking, but if I open my heart again, I will be hurt again. That is possible. Love always carries risk, but there is something more dangerous than being wounded. It is living an entire life without feeling anything at all. Jesus did not avoid the cross to protect his emotions. He walked into it because love was worth the pain. There is a verse few people want to sit with, not because it is unclear, but because it demands too much. Let us go to him outside the camp, bearing the disgrace he bore. Outside the camp, not into safety, not into comfort, but away from what is familiar, what is accepted, what feels protected. Love is not restored in comfort. It is restored in sacrifice. Outside the camp is not always a physical place. It is a position of the heart. It is choosing faithfulness over approval. It is no longer asking, is this safe for me, but asking, is this true before God? Love grows cold when safety becomes the highest priority. Love is restored when obedience takes its place. Many believe sacrifice means loss, but in Scripture, sacrifice is how love stays alive. Whatever is not surrendered will eventually be ruled by fear. When you keep love to protect yourself, you also keep back joy, life, and warmth. Jesus did not love from a distance. He stepped into suffering, into betrayal, into misunderstanding, into the cross, not because he was weak, but because it was the only way to redeem a heart grown cold. Many today are loyal to the image of Christianity, yet afraid to step into others' pain. They fear being used, being misunderstood, being seen as foolish. But God's love was never built on fear of rejection. It was built on willingness to lose for the sake of truth. Every follower of Christ must face this moment. Will you close your heart to protect it, or entrust it to the only one who can keep it alive? There is no neutral ground. Either you choose control to avoid pain, or you choose trust to truly live. Sacrifice does not begin with great acts. It begins with small choices. Choosing to listen when you want to walk away. Choosing forgiveness when bitterness feels justified. Choosing truth when silence is easier. Choosing love with no guarantee of return. Each choice is a step outside the camp. Here is the paradox of the kingdom. Where you lose control, you find life. Where you accept vulnerability, you are healed. Where you sacrifice, love begins to warm again. Many wait until they feel ready to love. But Scripture does not say, love when you are strong. It says, my power is made perfect in weakness. Love is not born after strength returns. It is born when weakness is offered to God. You may have tried to warm your heart through discipline, knowledge, or activity. But none of these can replace the presence of God. True fire does not come from human effort. It comes from the altar. And every altar requires an offering. The offering today is no longer animals. It is the self you want to protect, the need to be recognized, the right to hold resentment, the safety you built for yourself. When these are placed on the altar, love no longer struggles to survive. The Spirit breathes life into it. You may ask, how do I know my heart is healing? The answer is not intense emotion, it is softness. When others' pain begins to hurt again, when tears return, when compassion appears where exhaustion once ruled. That is not regression. That is life returning. Love does not return to make you comfortable. It returns to make you real. And no real life exists without the cross. How do you keep loving when the world grows colder? Not loving once, not loving in emotional highs, but loving steadily, faithfully, without growing cold. The answer is not willpower, not strength. It is hope. Hope is not optimism. It is anchoring the soul to what does not change when everything else shakes. When hope fades, you do not always become bitter. You simply become cautious, less expectant, less loving. And that is where love begins to cool. Jesus never promised the world would become easier to love. He promised, I am with you always. Love stays alive not because circumstances improve, but because his presence remains. You cannot keep the fire if you do not return to the source. No one loves forever on yesterday's strength. No one lives on old spiritual experiences. Love must be nurtured, not through activity, but through abiding. Abide in the Word when it challenges you. Abide in prayer when you feel nothing. Abide in community when you want to withdraw. Each time you remain, you place another log on a weakening fire. Here is the honest truth. If you only open your heart when it feels safe, you rarely will. This world is not designed to protect your heart, but God is. Not by preventing pain, but by entering it with you. To love God's way is not naive, it is courageous. Courage to feel in a world that numbs, courage to hope in an age of cynicism, courage to trust when disappointment feels logical. You may ask, but won't I burn out if I love like this? Not if you do not love alone. When you love in your own strength, you empty yourself. When you love through God's life, you are renewed. That is why Jesus never asked us to generate love. He said, abide in me. Abide in him when you are strong. Abide in him when you are weak. Abide in him when you doubt yourself. Love is not sustained by your perfection, but by his faithfulness. If you have walked this journey to the end, you may realize something now. You are not cold. You are not heartless. You are tired. And God does not shame a tired heart. He invites it to rest. There is a gentle but real invitation still being spoken. Return to your first love, not careless love, not foolish love, but love offered by a heart fully surrendered to God. The world does not need more people who are right. It needs people who still love, not louder voices, but hearts that have refused to freeze. Not perfect people, but people willing to sacrifice so love does not die. If there is a prayer for this generation, perhaps it is this: Lord, keep my heart soft in a world growing hard. Because when love is alive, hope remains. And when hope remains, darkness never has the final word. If this message touched you, do not keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who feels themselves growing cold but does not know why. And remember this: God did not come to accuse you. He came to warm you again.